Hi, everybody. This week I'll be addressing the Perez et al. Article and Chapter 4 from Sedlasek's Beyond the Big Test. In 2010, Harper noted that many studies designed to explore racial achievement gaps for students of color focused on students' deficits and amplified their failures rather than considering their successes. Researchers have historically examined all the reasons why students of color have struggled in higher education and have not constructed frameworks for why students are successful. Harper considered how research questions historically written from a deficit mindset could be reconsidered from an anti-deficit perspective. Perez, Garcia-Lewis, Balising, and Martinez looked to extend Harper's anti-deficit achievement framework to Latinx students. In advancing an anti-deficit achievement framework for Latinx college students, the authors considered four contexts that are particularly influential for Latinx students in higher education. Those are the social, institutional, community, and familial contexts. With regards to the social context, Latinx students are often perceived as representing a single culture, which is a false perception leading to overgeneralizations. In reality, students identifying as Latinx come from diverse ethnicities, each with its own history and culture, and it is impossible and incorrect to consider students as coming from a homogeneous background. Latinx students endure microaggressions stemming from stereotypes that have negative impact on their academic attainment. The authors caution there is often a singular approach to addressing prejudice, which does not take into account the perceptions of prejudice that differ for each individual and can vary for different minority groups. Social context influences the experience of Latinx students, and care must be taken to address and understand the different experiences of different racial and ethnic subgroups. In the institutional context, the authors considered how psychological, behavioral, and structural cultural dimensions influence the experience of Latinx students. Minority students perceive the educational climate as being more hostile, and they endure prejudice to a higher degree than their white peers. This perception can negatively impact students' performance and psychological well-being. The nature of students' perceived interpersonal conflict impacts their self-concept and hurts their academic progress. The stereotypes faced by Latinx students can vary by age and gender and can leave students feeling like they need to navigate the academic landscape alone and without support. Introducing peer mentoring can provide invaluable support for helping students. In the community context, the differences between the campus culture and Latinx students' home communities can be overwhelming for students. Creating opportunities for Latinx students to bridge the gap between the college and home communities can ease the transition to college. Programs designed to help students retain their sense of culture provide Latinx students with chances to integrate more into the campus culture without foregoing the community relationship they want to maintain. Peer mentoring can again provide younger students with strategies for increasing their sense of belonging while providing older students an opportunity to share their experiences. Campus programs that incorporate service learning are particularly strong at increasing a sense of belonging among Latinx students and allowing them the opportunity to reach out to their community, both of which tend to decrease the perceptions of hostility on campus. For the familial context, Latinx students face one of the greatest myths, and that is the lack of family support for higher education. In reality, several researchers have found that family support is an important element of Latinx families, which directly impacts success elements like desire to attend college and persistence. The authors note there is need for further research into this context of the anti-deficit framework. The authors encouraged future research that considers the various subgroups represented by the Latinx label in order to determine in what ways gender, nationality, and ethnicity impact academic outcomes. An approach that differentiates between different subgroups of Latinx student cultures will enable colleges to establish more programs designed to empower students by emphasizing the cultural elements that bolster their academic performance and increase their sense of belonging to the campus culture without removing them from their communities. In Chapter 4 of Beyond the Big Test, Sedlasek defined non-cognitive variables as those relating to adjustment, motivation, and perceptions, rather than the traditional verbal and quantitative areas typically measured by standardized tests, And that quote is taken from page 36. The non-cognitive variables encompass traits and characteristics of students that have been predictive of success. The first of those concepts is a positive self-concept. Successful students possess confidence and are self-assured. Self-confidence is of particular importance for minority students and students of color who are required to navigate a system that was not built for them. Echoing Perez et al., Sedlacek commented that Latinx students struggle with how Latin they should be, which causes problems within the social and community contexts. It is essential that minority students are confident enough to overcome barriers to their success and to feel like they are part of the system, while at the same time embracing the cultural and familial aspects of their lives that they treasure. Sedlacek identified researchers who have found a positive self-concept to be vital among members of the LGBTQ community, among women, African American, Native American, Pacific Islander, and Asian students. The second context addressed by Sedlacek is a realistic self-appraisal, and Sedlacek defines this as the ability to assess one's strengths and weaknesses. This ability is important among minority students as they attempt to navigate a system that at times presents them with what Perez et al. Identified as microaggressions from faculty and staff. Perez noted that faculty and staff are often unaware of the microaggressions they present towards students. It's important that students of color have an honest understanding of their own strengths and limitations, and Sedlacek was clear that feedback from instructors that is too positive can be as damaging as feedback that is inconsistent or overly negative. The third context considered was the ability to successfully handle the system. This variable refers to a student's ability to successfully navigate the college system. For minority students, this means being able to navigate the system without being derailed by encountered hostility or racism. Sedlacek noted that students who are prepared to deal with racism are better prepared for college success. This is true of women and minority students, although the forms of racism they encounter will look different. Perez et al. Identified the importance of providing peer mentors to address this variable so that young students can benefit from the experiences of their older mentors. The preference for long-term goals is important because college is a slow journey towards professional goals, and those students who have long-term goals are more likely to be successful in college. This is difficult for minority students because of the lack of role models who can explain the connection between today's work and tomorrow's gains. An understanding of long-term goals correlates with persistence, which is indicative of college success. Again, as Perez et al. Emphasized, the presence of a peer mentor can be invaluable for helping minority students to succeed. The next context was the availability of a strong support person. Having a person who can offer support is an indicator of academic success. Many students of color lack a person who can provide guidance in navigating the college system, which amplifies the negative impact of obstacles. When a student has a support person, the failures that are inevitable in college can be put into perspective and overcome. Additionally, Sedlacek commented that a support network will encourage a white student who drops out of school to return to school, whereas the lack of support means most minority students lack that community pressure to return to college. Perez et al. Identified the importance of support networks and encouraged the inclusion of groups that support service learning because it provides students with a solid connection to the academic and home community and provides a support network for minority students. Having leadership experiences prior to college is another context that was identified by Sedlacek and is an important indicator of potential college success, particularly for women and minority students. Although this is not something explicitly identified by Perez et al., the authors did note the importance of serving as a peer mentor and providing experience and guidance to young students. Sedlacek is careful to identify that leadership experience may be more important in minority and non-traditional students because they lack the support network to make up for the lack of experience. Many non-traditional and minority students have leadership experience, but may not understand the importance of identifying non-traditional sources of leadership. Being involved in a community is an important indicator of the likelihood of success in college. Minority students who belong to a community in college are more likely to stay in school and have an opportunity to develop a concept of self, learn valuable leadership qualities, and gain a support group who can help them learn to navigate the system. Perez identified the importance of community in the Latinx culture and encouraged the creation of community groups for Latinx students, particularly those campus communities that worked within the local community and could encourage feelings of belonging in both the college and local community. The final non-cognitive variable identified by Sedlacek was knowledge acquired in a field. And he noted that learning outside of the traditional classroom is a valuable skill that is associated with college success. Although this is not an aspect identified by Perez, the ability to gain knowledge and understanding from life experiences is invaluable and intersects with many of the qualities identified by the authors. Sedlacek identified a few assessment instruments that can be used to measure the 8 non-cognitive variables. Through the inclusion of the non-cognitive questionnaire, interviews, essays, portfolios, or application review, colleges can gain a valuable perspective on the qualities of their applicants and the likelihood that they can succeed in college. The measurement of non-cognitive variables is valuable for all students and provides a way to determine which students possess the character traits needed to be successful in college. Here's a list of references, and you all have access to Perez and Sedlacek. The Harper article can be found online for free,